Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 12th Government Relations and Communications Committee meeting. And I would like to say that we'll be joined in a little bit by our co-chair, Chuck Madden, I think, and our student representative, our brand new student representative. Our teacher representative, unfortunately, had a medical incident, so she is not able at the last minute to make it. Lydia's here, and Mike was unable to make the meeting tonight. So that said, I would like to turn it over to our administrative liaisons for introductions and administrative remarks.
I have two to share. One is October 20th. We confirmed with our 3 local reps that we will be hosting our...
Yes, I know. Come on in, Jack. Right here. You know what, this chair.
Thank you.
Take this one over here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Take a deep breath.
Yes.
You're fine.
It's all good.
Okay.
Come on, Jack. Navigate this field of life.
Thank you.
You're off.
So happy to have you here.
Thank you. So October 20th at 8:30, we're going to be hosting our legislative breakfast. We have confirmation from our 3 reps. Once we get confirmation from the committee, I'll get information out to the rest of the board and the administration.
Excuse me, Kevin, did you say all 3 reps are confirmed to come?
All 3 reps have confirmed. Now,
That's great.
We know how it works, right? So it becomes a busy time of year, and sometimes they'll send a representative in their place.
Wait, do you mean the senator and 2 representatives?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I stop for just one second for the benefit of Mr. Jack Hughes, who is joining us as our student representative this year, and we're so happy to have you here, Jack.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, for a moment, just let him know do you want to take some notes, because one of the things we're talking about, sorry, I don't mean to sound too pedantic or anything, but
Stop being his mother.
but we're talking about a legislative breakfast that we've been hosting for several years, where the local legislators come in and we as a board and administration talk to the legislators about some issues. And in the past, we've had our student representatives to this committee join us for that. So if you want to mark down in your calendar and see if it's okay with Mr. Bechtold, which generally it is, I think, that on October 20th at 8:30 a.m., the legislative breakfast is taking place, and if it works out, we'd love to have you join us.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Kane, but I just wanted to go with Dr. Kane. Not yet. Okay, I can't keep track. Everybody's working on
We're
their
all
dissertations, and I can't keep it straight.
We're all writing something
Okay.
a big paper. Yeah. So that's confirmed. One of the main topics, as we discussed in the spring of last year, is, do we wish to continue to have the discussion with the League of Women Voters regarding having an educational forum similar to what occurred at Wallingford-Swarthmore last year? And also, I just sadly want to report that the PSBA student delegate program is not occurring this year. They are taking a year off to determine whether or not what direction they want to take it in the future. Last year was our first year participating in it. Mr. Battiti was a chaperone, but this year in speaking with them, they're reconsidering the direction in which it's going. So more information will be shared.
Can you put the microphone closer to you?
So I'll just say, PSBA delegate forum is canceled, not happening this year. They're going to reconsider and reevaluate the program going forward. That's all.
And may I just ask a question so that we can be clear, because I know we've had several conversations about this in our past meetings. In terms of doing a forum similar to what Wallingford-Swarthmore did, we've gone back and forth. Do we take what we're currently doing and sort of morph it into that, or do we just keep with the legislative breakfast and then plan that for some time later? Could we just state for the record here, like, what we think we should be doing? I'm interested to hear from Lydia what we think, how we want to handle this at this point, so we have some definitive direction about how to go forth. I remember in our planning meeting that we talked about, I think, that we would talk to we would go with our traditional breakfast and chat with the legislators at that time to see if they would be interested, because without them, we can't have a town hall. So we would see if they were up for doing something like Wallingford Swarthmore put on and go from there. Is that something that seems to make sense to everybody here, so we can sort of...
Yeah.
So I think our legislative breakfast is perfect. The way it came about was there were so many things being discussed at the state level, and Radnor truly being leaders in this area in terms of public education. We had so much expertise here that we needed to get basically our administrators talking to these reps.
Mm-hmm.
They just did not have that connection. And so it was very clearly sort of, it was a clear line of communication between our group of people who had a tremendous amount of expertise and the reps that had, people on their staff that basically were young people that didn't have a huge background in education either. And it was to really just give them a blitz of knowledge from what our people knew. So we need to keep doing that, especially now with them trying to dismantle, in many ways, our funding source and all this discussion. They don't have the expertise in Harrisburg to understand public education, and that's why it's so critical that we allow them the access to the people that really know. Like special ed, no one in the state knows special ed better
Right.
than Kevin.
I think it's understood that they're two separate and distinct events with
True.
separate and distinct purposes. I think the question was, would we perhaps want to do both? A legislative breakfast which provides that intimate educational opportunity between our district and the legislators, but then also give the community a chance to interact with the legislators, similar to the way Wallingford Swarthmore did last spring, so that there's both, not either or.
So my opinion on that is if the legislators want that, they should approach our community. There are opportunities and forums to talk to them as citizens in Radnor. But for our district, what we can best give them, I believe, is this opportunity to talk to the people whose information they really need to be informed. So I think that's our role. And so if they want, if we want to do another event or they're interested in doing another event and come in and talk to people, but I don't think that we should change what I consider one of the most important things that we can offer as leaders in education.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, no one's trying to change
That's
that.
my-
It was just
yeah.
adding on to it, because sometimes we've struggled to get the support for our issues on a broader basis than just with these one-on-one conversations with legislators. So this would be a way, particularly in light of, say, property tax elimination, that issue, to help our community be more engaged and have a chance to express their thoughts or questions about these issues, because we need our community often to support us in issues we're advocating for. So we would still be having those direct conversations with the legislature, but we would then also give our community an opportunity to get engaged in those issues, because there is a critical mass, I think, is really helpful for us. So that's why we would almost add on. That's what Wallingford Swarthmore did. They wanted
Right.
communities to support what the district's needs were, and that's why they opened up this forum and worked it out with the legislators.
So that could be a second thing we do.
Right, that's what
in
we're
my
talking
opinion.
about.
But I don't think it should take the place or be instead of this.
That was never a consideration. It's, do we want to consider, when we meet with these people at our breakfast, posing the opportunity to do a second event to them? And I think, just because, we've had a few conversations, I think we should crystallize it and move on. Unless there's any objection to it, we would like to pose to the legislators, I think, at the breakfast, the opportunity to do something like Wallingford Swarthmore did at some future date. Do you have any objection to that?
Well, I personally don't, but I would throw it back. I mean, it's sort of the time and energy of your staff. How much can you or do you want to expend for that purpose? So, I mean, I don't think it's my decision. I mean, what's your opinion?
Sure. I think that, we had this discussion, I guess, at a June meeting. I can't remember. I remember we initially had some of this discussion as well,
right.
and might have been actually even a May meeting. And having not experienced our breakfast yet, so this will be the first time that I'll have experienced our breakfast. And then we had the opportunity, I know, at the IU, and the three of us were in attendance to meet some of the legislators over at the IU. And I think when we had our discussion about, whether we wanted to schedule a second event, I thought we left it with the idea that we would focus on what we've done traditionally with the breakfast.
Okay.
I think having that discussion with the legislators at the breakfast is certainly a good place to ask their opinions about what do you think. I think it would be probably, I would think that we would want to plan that for not this coming school year, but the following year, if that's the case. If it's something that the legislators are open to, we'd want to look at it, I think, for the following year. Because the other piece that I think we discussed last time is, do we want to possibly partner at all with the IU with that? I think we had some discussion about, really is this something that, you would get a better draw not only from the community, but you'd get a better draw from the legislators. Just like many of the people here in our community went to the Wallingford Swarthmore, they wound up opening it up beyond just their boundaries.
Right.
Maybe this would be a better thing that we would set up, through the IU to have a little bit larger of a forum. So I think to investigate those pieces, talking to them at the breakfast, maybe reaching out to the IU, talking to them about the possibility. I think it would become a challenge down the road if in Delaware County, if every district did their own ones. I don't know that. I think it would become, redundant, and I think we'd wind up with less. I would guess that we would not probably get the representatives there. We would get, just like we struggle with now, getting staffers there. We really want the legislator there. So I think we should continue to investigate those things and set this for a goal, or potentially look into this for the following year, not this year, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, keeping in mind that the representatives have certain districts they represent.
Right.
So
Yes.
in Wallingford Swarthmore, I think those representatives covered 3 districts out of the county.
Yep.
And so I'm not quite sure how many districts ours cover. It's more than Radnor, I think. So I'm not sure that it gets redundant when you have different legislators attending
Right.
different things, but you certainly would want to make sure that the districts those particular legislators represent are all
Yes.
in on the forum. So that's what we'd need to just figure out, is
Yeah.
who else do our representatives represent in terms of districts?
And
I think
I
it's probably
will-
2 or 3.
I will say, I mean, for the breakfast, we usually get them. I mean, Greg Vitale comes every single time. Bill Adolph came, I think, every single time, and Dalen Leach came every single time. So they did not send reps. I mean, they understood this was, a unique learning opportunity. So
Yeah, and they also mentioned that we're the only district that does something like that. That's what I learned attending it last year, that they said that the other districts they represent do not do that legislative breakfast. So that was nice to hear, and they seemed to really enjoy it. We revamped sort of the way we approached the questions last year, and we got some really good feedback. So we're all on then for October 20th at 8:30, and I just like to, for the sake of the minutes and clarity, because we might look back at those, that at our superintendent's direction, we will approach the legislators at the breakfast this year and inquire if they'd be interested in doing a forum like the one Wallingford Swarthmore held that would be open to the communities they represent for the following school year. So just want to make sure, because we've discussed it a few times, that's the direction at this point going
Does that
forward.
make sense?
I think so. Sound good to you?
Yeah.
Jack? Okay. All right, so I just want to make sure it's written down and recorded so that we can plan from there without any question. Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Petiti, would you like to go on with your admin remarks?
Sure, because I have 3, and
Okay.
I'll try to make them quick. First one
We have an
involves...
hour and a half today because we've got 3 months of meetings in one night, so we were
Yes.
granted the luxury of an extra half hour.
Well, the first one involves the new 2-click process that we've put in place at the community's request to access board and committee meeting materials. Now you can click on the calendar listing on our homepage, that will take you to the meeting date and location, and right from there you can click on a Friday afternoon after the materials are posted, or Monday morning, if it's a late post of the materials, a link directly to the materials for that meeting.
Thank you very much. I've heard more than one person say that they appreciated the efficiency of that, so thank you.
Okay. Second is I am hosting a board docs overview session for community members on Monday, September 18th, down here at 4:30 to 5:30, and then it'll just be an extension of the video tutorial that you may have seen at the board meeting on the 26th, the 29th, whenever last August, and go over some more features of the service. And I invite community members who are interested to join me for that hour.
And I will also offer that.
Now you're off.
Now I'm off. Sorry. I will also offer that if there's community members who are unable to attend that session, if they reach out to Mr. Petiti, he'd be happy to try to set something else up as well. So we do want to make sure that we're making that available and people can understand how board docs works.
Okay, and
Thank you,
just
Mr.
for,
Petiti.
I'm sorry, but it's the teacher in me, even though I was never a teacher. But I mean, I think it's more the parent in me. Jack, just so you know, the board docs is a new, how would you describe it? With
It's a
software?
board meeting material management system, Jack.
Yeah. So-
And what it does is it makes it easier to access and read and print, if you like, board meeting materials.
So there's a training, we're switching over to that, and there's a training session. So if it's of interest to you as a member of our committee, you're welcome to join us for
Jack,
that.
if you can manage Schoology, you'll be fine. You'll be all right. Don't worry.
It's very intuitive.
Probably so far
Right,
ahead of all of us. We're not worried about you.
How many
In this
training
case, we're not.
sessions are you having? I think I'm going to need more than a few. May I just ask two questions before you finish the administrative remarks? I think we had discussed that in October, there'll be more addressed regarding video streaming.
I was going to go over that right now, actually.
Oh, I thought you were done. I'm so sorry.
No, I have one more.
Okay.
So to that point, I continue to work with our tech department and TV studio to investigate broadcasting our committee meetings live on television. The matter is a bit more complex than it may seem due to technical complications, so I'll try to provide this update as efficiently as possible. Since our last update, Dr. McCook, who is our Director of Technology, has surveyed the other Delaware County districts regarding their streaming offerings. To date, of the 14 districts surveyed, 9 have responded. Of the 9, none currently broadcast their committee meetings live on television or online. Just one other district, William Penn, currently broadcasts their full board meetings live on TV. None stream their board meetings live online. Of course, it doesn't mean that we can't be the first or we have to follow in their footsteps, but it does provide some perspective as we continue to research this subject. Dr. McCook is also working to arrange a meeting with MediaCast representatives who we currently use to broadcast our meetings on our website to discuss this issue and gather more information. This summer, we did make some progress toward the possibility of broadcasting live on TV with the installation of certain equipment. However, testing uncovered that some additional equipment and upgrades were still necessary, and our tech department estimates these costs to be around $17,000. Lastly, we continue to wait for a response from Comcast after we participated in an audit last October to determine if we qualify for additional funding from the company, which would enable us to purchase additional audio-video equipment outside of district funds. The last update we received from the firm conducting the audit was on August 14th, at which time we were advised a conclusion will come, quote, in the very near term. However, since it's been a year since we've conducted the audit with them, I will not hold our breath on Comcast getting back. But I will definitely keep up with reaching out to the lawyer who is helping the firm with the audit for status updates.
Great, thank you very much. Obviously, you've been in some heavy-duty conversations and research on that, and we'll look forward to hearing what comes next. So with that, I am looking for public comment. And we did welcome Jack, right?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Okay. Welcome again. So let's have some public comment. Would anybody like to make a comment? Welcome, Mrs. Sherry.
Good evening, Judy Sherry, Governor's Circle, Newtown Square. In listening to the discussion about the legislative breakfast that you've had in the past, that apparently has involved an intimate interaction with our administration and board members with elected legislators. I wondered specifically, since this was characterized as such a positive interaction, what specifically were the positive results that came about as a result of this intimate conversation? I'd like to really hear the specific positive results. Also, I would like the legislators to be approached, hopefully before this meeting, and asked as to whether or not they would agree to having this conversation filmed so that we could actually, as part of the residents of the township, have an understanding of what issues were considered important and brought to the legislators' attention and whether or not they were addressed. So I'd like to know if they would be willing to have that happen, or willing in the future to open up these breakfasts to residents, and possibly, I'm glad to hear that our student representative is invited, but possibly for other students or the press to be a part of it. Then moving on. So I learned that it's going to cost us $17,000 to upgrade our equipment to broadcast television, to televise these meetings, whether they're committee or otherwise large, $17,000. And that the holdup in actually having this happen has been Comcast. So I just want to be sure, hopefully, that I'm correct in that, because they should be held accountable if they've dragged their feet for over a year in getting back to us with information. Another question I have, and I'm not sure whether I'm correct about this, did we have a public survey about our communications yet? Has that taken place yet?
I think we're going to discuss that. Mr. Petiti has a whole PowerPoint presentation to go through.
Okay.
And that, at that time, I think he plans to address that.
Okay, so, but it hasn't happened yet?
No, it has not happened yet.
All right, so I just, so I'll be interested in that presentation. Maybe that will answer some of my questions about this. Then getting back to the television programming just in general from the district. I know that at least in one survey, it was not particularly viewed in a favorable light. And so I'm wondering if the administration has any recommendations to improve the quality and scheduling of programming. I think I mentioned before that oftentimes in the distant past, they've taken a meeting and looped it for 24 hours after the meeting was over so that people could kind of just tune in at any time and catch part of the meeting, rather than trying to figure out what day of the week and what time it was going to be on. So I would put forward that as a possible suggestion. And also, I would like to think that our students are encouraged to think about using their phones and their cameras creatively, so that perhaps we could have more student work displayed on our television stations, rather than sometimes just a scroll or something. I think it would really be a great use. Everybody these days seems to have a phone and a camera, so I'd like to suggest that, and maybe our student representative.
I'm just confused. You know, when we think of television stations, we think we have RAD TV, and then we have our township channel, right?
No, just RTSD.
But which channel?
And that's the channel I'm interested in having more creativity from students on, RAD TV.
Okay, I thought we play lots of things having to do with students on RAD TV, no?
I like to think that we do, but we can certainly look at the slate of programming and see how we could up that game a little bit.
And it's not on RAD TV where we replay
It is.
meetings, is it? I thought it was
To
on
to clarify,
Yes.
there are two different channels at
Right.
Radnor Township, because residents can view to watch township and school district items. The one that the district owns, I guess, or manages is Channel 8, at least, for Comcast. which is Rad TV,
Okay.
and
31 for Verizon.
31 for, thank you. And then the other one is where we happen to broadcast our board meetings live, and that's the Township
The
Channel.
Township
That
building.
is the only district program that goes on the Township Channel, is our live meetings.
Right, so
The
the
reruns are on the,
Township Channel.
No,
No.
the reruns are on Rad TV.
Okay.
yeah, they're on our TV.
Who
Oh,
gets
yeah.
2 channels to themselves? I mean, 3?
We have also, we have
There's
another
21,
channel,
too.
21.
Okay.
But
All right.
I'm just suggesting that perhaps students individually could possibly play a greater role in putting forth programming on the RAD TV channel.
Gotcha.
And I guess that's, number 3. In the proposed goals that are listed tonight, the district's website, we need to make sure that the district's website is accessible to users with disabilities. That's one of the goals. And I would like to suggest, because I've heard this from multiple people, that we consider a different way of being able to access programming online other than whatever method we're using right now. Because when you go to see meetings replayed, it's very difficult for some people to access it with their computers. I don't know if some computers are better equipped than others, but I've heard it from many people, and I know the township puts its meetings on YouTube, and no one seems to have any trouble with that. So
Right, I think we've addressed that before, the silver light issue. And
exactly.
that's still,
But it's still an issue,
I
and
know,
I'm
and it
bringing
will
up.
be, actually. We've said that. It will be until we have a contract we're paying for. So until we conclude that contract, we're not going to just dispense with it. But when that contract concludes, which I believe is June, our eye is on that because we don't know if we're going to renew. We might go a different way. And with as fast as technology evolves, there may be something 10 times better than YouTube out there, if I'm recalling these conversations correctly. Mr. Petiti is on it, and he is going to make sure that whatever, if there is a replacement, whatever it is, it's going to be great. So stay tuned.
Is it possible to do YouTube and this silver light or whatever it is? Is it possible to do 2 things? Because as I
Soon.
said,
I think at this point,
Yeah.
everything's a possibility. It's just not ready to be decided at this moment. But our eye is on June, the contract expiration, and we will be making a decision around that time, right? Is that
Right.
accurate?
well, the public's eye is still on it now, not necessarily
well,
June. So
Hang in there.
Just so you
All I
know.
can tell you is we're not going to throw the money of the contract out. We're going to conclude the contract and then decide what to do.
Could I just clarify one thing, that it's important that we all understand the involvement of our technology department in this situation. I think that logically it seems to be communication-centric, but our technology department has a large role in this MediaCast
True.
service and the software and the equipment. So I just want to make sure that, they don't come to these meetings as often, but they do have a large say in how we progress and proceed.
So maybe, Michael, we were talking about doing a long range. You had said that you want to do sort of a long range planning for our meetings, and maybe having technology come in towards the end of the year as June is approaching is something to make note of so we don't forget, and we can hear directly from technology come April or May or something like that, if that would be okay. Hoping you remember that. Note to self. Okay, thank you. All right, so with any other public comment? I'm sorry. And we got started a little late, so I'm just going to ask for a little bit. We might need to run a little bit overtime. Not with public comment, but
Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne. Good evening.
good evening.
Just a couple questions, and it's on the review of the 2016-17 GRCC goals. You've gone through and explained to us all, which was great to see the completion of these goals. And will you be discussing this evening the GRCC proposed goals 2017-18 in more specifics than what are listed on the slides? In other words, is similar in how you will be monitoring, evaluating, and advocating so that you meet the four strategic goal areas of the comprehensive plan of the school district. And once again, setting up what is known as SMART goals, which a friend of mine uses quite frequently, and that means specific, measurable, actionable, results-based, and time-bound goals. So you're setting specific goals, not just saying, this is what we need to do over the 17-18 school year, but we will specifically by such and such a date complete such and such a goal. And one of those goals being how you're going to communicate to how important this referendum is that's going to appear on the ballot, and how we're going to get the school district involved and the school board reaching out to our residences on recommendations for how you think the vote should be on that referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other? Yep.
Roberta Winters, I just wanted to mention, since you have a teacher representative on the committee and you're bringing the student representative to the breakfast, it would be nice if the teacher representative might also go to the breakfast if possible.
Oh, absolutely. We would love the teacher. I think that's probably Mr. Batchelor's call, though.
I don't think you can just approve that, Amy.
That's why I said she's of course invited, but I can't make that decision. We would love to have her. And if she were here, I would have told her so. Okay, great. So with the conclusion of public comment, we will move to the approval of minutes from our May meeting. So that was the last time we met. And I guess, colleague here, are we good with the minutes?
Are we good, guys?
I mean, I've read through them and I think that they're good. So can we make a motion to approve the minutes? Good. They are approved. All right, so let's move into then the agenda item number 1, which is the review of the 2016-17 committee goals. And I see that it says A. Goldman and C. Mann, but I know that Mr. Petiti is providing video support. So do you want to run through them, or do you want me to? Or? Okay. Sure. Oh, okay. So anyway, we set goals in the beginning of the 2016-17 school year for our committee, and I don't think unless anybody would like to, I can read them again. As the first one was the development of a clear, consistent, and comprehensive communications policy in keeping with one of our 4 strategic goal areas of our comprehensive plan, which was clear and consistent communications. The second one was to monitor, evaluate, and advocate for or against evolving federal and state education legislation that impacts our 4 strategic goal areas of our comprehensive plan. And the third one was to work with our Radnor community at large, fellow Pennsylvania school districts, and local representatives where appropriate to raise awareness and generate additional advocacy in support of our work as a committee. And, we take those goals very seriously. We also they're as SMART. I think they fall into the SMART category, as smart as something like government relations and communication can be. So we're proud to report out that we do feel that we have evidence of having completed those goals. With regard to goal number 1, we approved at our August, or was it June? At our June business meeting, a brand new comprehensive communications policy number 903. And upon the development of those accompanying administrative regulations, we will also be able to rescind 3 policies that are on the book. So we got a swap out of, instead of 3, we're now down to 1, and it's comprehensive, it's much more current, and covers all of our areas of need in terms of communications policy. That will be number 903. Our second goal, which, as I said, was to monitor, evaluate, and advocate for or against evolving federal and state education legislation that impacts our strategic plan. We have done a number of things on that front. We, as a board, passed a resolution regarding Pennsylvania graduation requirements, which was adopted by the district on December 20th, 2016. And that particular PA graduation requirement was opposing Keystones as a graduation requirement. We had passed resolutions like that previously, but we went through another pass-through because it had come up again in legislation, and we wanted to make clear that we were still adamantly opposed to keystones being graduation requirements for our students. We also passed as a board a property tax resolution opposing anything similar to Senate Bill 76, which would eliminate the district's ability to collect school property taxes in order to fund our operation here. So we adopted that on January 31st, 2017, and we also, State Representative Alex Charlton attended our school board meeting after receiving many phone calls and letters from Radnor constituents at our board's urging about that resolution, and he assured us that he would oppose it when it came before him. We also, every month, attach our monthly DCIU legislative report, which gives us an update on what's happening federally and at the state level. We don't cover everything because we would need a 6-hour meeting to do that, but we do try to highlight things that really seem to have some traction and super relevance to our district. So, and the third goal, which is to work with our Radnor community at large and fellow districts to raise awareness and generate additional advocacy. We did that with our property tax resolution. We did a big campaign on our website. We sent out through School Messenger, I believe, notices to our entire community asking them to please rally behind us. We had the forms out at all of our meetings. And clearly, the message got through because Alex Charlton, unannounced, showed up and said, hey, I'm being flooded by calls from your community, and I want to assure you I am not going to endorse this legislation. So I think we succeeded in that goal. We also had our 4th annual legislative breakfast last September. We had school board members who attended the school leadership conference on October 15th and 18th, which is a great opportunity to commingle with other school board representatives and hear about very topical things going on across the state. And like Mr. Kane had referenced earlier, for the first time we had student liaisons to our school board attend that student delegate conference that was being hosted that weekend, and reports from them were that they really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it and had a chance to interact with students they otherwise would not have met throughout the state. We had district administrators and school board members attend a press conference regarding educational issues at the DCIU. And district administrators and school board members attended a legislative breakfast at the DCIU. We also had school board members attend the Educational Advocacy Day in Harrisburg. And Mr. Madden, as of last year, was representing the district as a member of the Delaware County Intermediate Unit Legislative Council. And we will continue to have a representative to that this year to be named shortly. So I just wanted to commend the administrative team and my colleagues on this committee and everybody else who played a role in helping us achieve these goals, because we can't do it alone. We really need the help of the community, and we've done our best to share out information that we think impacts all of us and provide ways for people to respond to it and engage if they're so inclined. Going into this school year, we sat down and looked at our goals and said, well, what do we want to set as goals for this year? And 2 of the 3 goals that we had for last year, we felt really are ongoing goals, because that's the essence of our purpose here, is to do things like monitor, evaluate, and advocate for or against evolving federal and state education legislation that impacts our strategic goals, our comprehensive plan, our district goals. I mean, that's really the essence of our committee. So we will continue to do that and provide evidence at the end of this school year of ways that we've done that, just like we did last school year. We also will continue to work with our Radnor community at large, fellow Pennsylvania districts, et cetera, to raise awareness and garner support, educate our community and garner support for those issues. And since the third goal was to develop a communications policy, and we have done that, and it's going to be very helpful. The communications department has been working strenuously under an agreement with the U.S. Department of the Education's the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights to work to ensure that the content on the district website is accessible to users with disabilities as required by Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's on as a goal because it's not something that you can accomplish in one afternoon. Michael's been working on that for quite some time, and that is something I think the work will continue into this school year and be wrapped up, we hope, by the end of this school year. So that's where we're headed this year with our goals. Any comments, questions, feedback from committee members here?
So what actually do we think we need to do for goal number 3? What do you really mean?
Yes, so in May, end of May, we entered into an agreement with OCR in response to a letter we received that suggested that our website isn't compliant in certain ways with accessibility regulations. And it's not something that is unique to Radnor. As of last July 2016, about 275 districts across the country received these letters. And most recently, a letter was received by Haverford School District and Springfield Delco. So it seems to be kind of a thing that's happening across the country where these letters are being served. So part of that process involves trainings of all of our site managers, so those that have the ability to edit content on our website. It involves making sure that all the pages can be read with a screen reader for those that may be visually impaired, and certain other things need to be put into place to make sure that it can be accessible to those with disabilities. So we're already on our way. Many of these trainings have started. The teachers have been informed. Our TEA has been informed. Our tech support staff at each building has been informed. Principals are on board. Our administration, who would have applicable duties here, have been informed. So there is a plan in place, and our solicitor's working with us closely to make sure that we can meet the deadline, which is actually 18 months from the day that we were given notice and signed the agreement. So that puts us about November of 2018, but I hope to have much of the fixes in place prior to that time.
Great, thank you. So I realized it covered agenda items 1 and 2 concurrently. So if there aren't any other questions or comments on those 2 agenda items, we can move on to agenda item number 3. And this is something that I think we were prepared to discuss back in June, but with the delay in passing the budget for the state, it's still relevant 3 months later, because a multifaceted school code bill is part of the series of budget implementation bills that will be considered once an agreement on the revenue plan for our state to fully fund the $32 billion spending package is enacted. And as of today, unless anybody has more updated information, I don't believe, even though the legislators are in session, the state has a revenue plan yet, which, by the way, is sort of playing out our concerns about cash flow should we not be able to collect our own revenue. So just like 2 years ago, here we go again, where in the very short future, and I'm sort of jumping to agenda item 4, so I'll park that, but there are districts who are going to be in a cash crunch in the not too distant future. So that's why we need to be able to continue to collect our own revenue, because the state can't figure out how to pass its revenue plan. Anyway, so I just wanted to mention the school code bill because there are some things in that will change the way things are currently being done. And one of those things that is a change to school law that would be included in the legislation is teacher furloughs. And this would allow school districts to furlough teachers for economic reasons, in addition to the current permitted reasons of enrollment declines, consolidation of schools, or curtailment of an educational program. Furloughs for economic reasons must be based on performance evaluations unless teachers have the same performance rating when seniority would serve as the basis for determining which one gets laid off. Reinstatement of furloughed teachers must be done in reverse order in which they were suspended. Now, Governor Wolf vetoed a similar bill that reached his desk last year, but I just thought it was important that we acknowledge, even though it's probably a very painful subject for many, that is in the school code bill. So it remains to be seen what happens with that. What else is in the school code bill is a Keystone exam delay of yet another year for Keystones to be a graduation requirement. So whereas it's on hold right now until the year of 2018-19, for students who graduate in 2019, which would be our current juniors, if this school code bill goes through as drafted, then it would push the graduation requirement to the year 2019-20. So just wanted to mention that. There is also more funding in the school code bill for educational improvement tax credit programs. There's also school board training, which is written into the bill, which would require all newly elected or appointed school directors, welcome Mr. Madden, and charter school trustees to take 4 hours of state Department of Education developed or approved alternative training in the skills and knowledge necessary to serve in those positions. Those who are reelected or reappointed would be required to take 2 hours of training, and the training is to be at no cost. So that's in there, school board members. And opioid instruction, mandating that beginning in 2000, and that's not it's not how to take opioids, mandating that beginning in 2018-19 school year, students in grades 6 through 12 must receive instruction related to the prevention of opioid abuse with an emphasis on the prescription drug epidemic and connection between prescribed drugs and addiction to heroin and other drugs. There's input on the state ESSA plan, which I believe is passed because that deadline was August 31st, and who knew that we wouldn't have the revenue plan by August 31st, so I think when they put this in there, they figured that would be a fait accompli, but it's now out of sync. Construction funding on hold. It extends the moratorium on the State Department of Education's acceptance of new school construction or renovation projects eligible for partial state reimbursement, and superintendent contract changes. It reduces the time frame from 150 days to 90 days of the expiration date for a school board to make a decision about whether to renew a superintendent or assistant superintendent contract, which must be done at a regular public school board meeting. If the renewal deadline is missed, the automatic renewal is limited to 1 year. So that is something, like I said, we had wanted to discuss in June because those are the kinds of things that are tucked away into legislation that all of a sudden appear, and you have a state mandate for this, that, or the other thing. So we had wanted to bring that up in June, and it's still relevant now because they're connected to the revenue plan, which has not been enacted yet. So are there any questions from anybody on our committee regarding agenda item number 3 and my review of the proposed school code bill as part of the 2017-18 Pennsylvania budget, and in particular the revenue plan? Nope. Okay. This is great. Okay, super. So then let's move on to agenda item number 4, which is the school property tax elimination update. And I want to just mention, I believe that Mr. Madden, there have been a series of town halls held, and there's another one to come in Marple, which I'll mention. But did you attend the one, Mr. Madden, and I believe it was Upper Darby?
I did, yes.
Okay. Do you want to sort of give us, you probably have your finger on the pulse of this most recently.
I attended, sat very quietly in the audience. There were other people there from Radnor, actually, who were part of the discussion, who got up and engaged the senators. It was a meeting of different state senators. Senator Killian was there.
McGarrigle.
Senator McGarrigle was there, and the two senators, and forgive me because I don't know their name, they were invited in to come. Mm-hmm. Senators will not come in and have a meeting in a senatorial district unless they're invited. and they were invited, and it was a Republican and a Democrat. There were also members from the real estate community. There were members from apartment building owners. There were members from the, I guess, the people that are pushing this forward. And forgive me, but I don't really know the name of the organization that sponsored it. But really what they're looking for is to eliminate. They're saying the elimination, but it's actually a tax shift. And it has some attractive components to it, depending upon your particular situation. And one of the components would be if you're living in an area and you're retired and you have high school taxes, and the shift is then placed from your property taxes to your use taxes, which would be your state income tax, and also the sales tax would increase, and the items that could be taxed would increase, the different items. So as someone who is a retired senior citizen, and Pennsylvania at this point, we don't tax your pension, and if you're not working, you're not going to be paying income tax. Okay, so you will be paying your sales tax. Again, this meeting took place in Upper Darby, and Upper Darby has a tax burden ratio which is high compared to what the salaries are. So there was one individual that got up, and his property was valued about $200,000, and he was paying, that he had stated, I think it was between $75,000 and $9,000 in school taxes. So if the taxing piece was shifted, he would be in good shape. Okay, so it's attractive to certain people, especially people who own property. They're retired. So they're selling this as if it would be a benefit and an elimination of school taxes. So again, that's one thing that is in favor of it. But what it does not address the equity piece. Because if you look at Radnor and our per student cost, okay, and you look at, say, for instance, Chester Upland, and you look at their student costs, all right, our budget would then become subsidized, we'll say, by the state. The state is then going to collect the money and send it back to us. And it's based on what our existing budget is. So we in Radnor will be getting whatever our student costs are, which are much more than what Chester Upland student costs are, okay? So in essence, we are creating a system that is going to continue to promote the inequity within the school systems by doing this and freezing this and then giving the money to the districts. So Radnor, for instance, will just say it's $20,000 to $10,000. Radnor would be receiving that amount of money, and Chester would be receiving that amount. So it really does nothing for in my opinion, it does nothing for the inequities that are within the school systems. And we need to look at changing that. So I think it's really not looking, it's not farsighted. We're not looking at how we're going to correct the educational issues that we need to deal with, and it's really just a tax shift that's being promoted, and it does have some traction with certain populations and certain parts of Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
So it's a geopolitical issue.
Oh, yes, and it could pass. So
Right.
we need to be diligent, and the state senators that were there, one of the main reasons they were opposed to it is because it didn't look at fixing any of the inequities within the system, and it was a tax shift and not really a tax elimination.
So one of the things that would need to happen before that kind of legislation is enacted is that there needs to be a change to the state constitution. And on July 11th, the General Assembly did pass House Bill 1285. And this House Bill 1285 is designed to amend the Pennsylvania Constitution to extend the General Assembly's authority to grant homestead exclusions. Under House Bill 1285, the exclusion level is increased to 100% of the assessed value of each homestead property within a local taxing jurisdiction. So that the passage of that bill in and of itself does not then give the state the authority to mandate that property taxes can no longer be collected by local taxing authorities. But it does allow, complemented by a voter referendum, the opportunity for the Constitution to be changed, which is the precursor step to legislation which would authorize the state to take such an action as Mr. Madden was describing. So things are moving, and again, there are things that sort of come at you out of nowhere, and this is very significant legislation that was approved on 1285 because it also resulted in the state publishing, being given the authority because the referendum was approved. It went through the proper procedure for a ballot question to appear. I think it had to go through the General Assembly twice, and it did, so that there will be a question on the November ballot that reads as such: shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended to permit the General Assembly to enact legislation authorizing local taxing authorities to exclude from taxation up to 100% of the assessed value of each homestead property within a local taxing jurisdiction, rather than limit the exclusion to 1/2 of the median assessed value of all homestead property, which is the existing law? Now, first of all, if people can understand the question, that's one thing, because this is written in absolute legalese, and the average person probably is going to say, what the heck does that mean? But the second thing about this question is that in no way, shape, or form does it give the punchline to what this question is really asking. So for those people who can decipher this wording and get the sense from it that they could potentially be absolved of having to pay property taxes up to 100% of their homestead value, they will vote yes. But there's nothing in here that speaks to the actual plan that would be implemented at this point, which is to do a tax shift, as Mr. Madden was describing, which means that their personal income tax is going to be increased and the sales and usage tax is going to be increased, not just to 7%, but many more items that are currently excluded from taxation will now be taxed, much of which we've been talking about since we passed our board resolution. So in terms of advocacy for us as a board and addressing the goals that we've set for ourselves, I would like to put out there to our board and ask for feedback. Do we think that it's important to get word out about this question and help people understand, I guess from our vantage point, how important it is to vote no? So because even though if the referendum is approved by voters, that in and of itself will not therefore mandate that we can no longer collect school district property taxes, but it enables that change in the Constitution, which paves the way for the legislation that will, in fact, mandate that. Does that make sense? So does anybody want to speak to any sort of have any ideas as to how do you think it's important that we get this message across about this ballot question, and how might we do that? So that's what I thought might make for some discussion tonight. Any administrative team, student, anybody want to
Help? Ken?
Sure. I think that, I think that's one of the pieces that, having Mr. Petiti as the point person for this committee and sharing just this discussion here that's taken place at this committee, I think could be important. And we can do that in several different venues, as Mr. Petiti has looked at, trying to, share that information with our community. So I think those steps could be taken to share that.
And what do you think would be the best process for that, given that we have one more meeting, not that it has to evolve in a meeting, but in terms of having some sense of how we can support that as a committee between now and November 8th. What would be the best process to go about that? And by the way, I'm just, I hope that my description of that was clear. I don't know, we're all learning a lot on the fly here with this legislation coming at us, but hopefully it was clear. Just want to make sure. And so what would you recommend as a process for us to pursue that so that we can get the word out? Is that something that should be done sort of in a planning meeting or just, within the administration, or what do you think?
I think, whatever plan we do, I think we should bring it back to the full board. So I think, we would need in 2 weeks to be able to share with the full board whatever that plan is for sharing the information.
Okay.
I think administratively, we can talk and, look at what are some of the options for how we can, share this information. And I think we could, between now and the full board meeting, provide you with some, an update on proposed process.
Okay, I would really appreciate that, because I think that's a great idea to bring it to the full board at the end of the month.
Yeah, and I think one issue that hasn't been mentioned in all of this is how this completely removes local control. So basically, you're no longer, a school district based on the values of your community and what your community wants and how Radnor likes to do things. This throws it all out the window, because we will have no authority to levy revenue here. So, this is a fundamental change from how public education is viewed in this country. And I think that's the aspect to it that you miss. When you read this, you're like, oh, what just, it sounds good to lower property taxes. And that is absolutely not what this is. Taxes will go up for most people because it will shift it to, they don't realize, to areas that they're going to pay anyway. And what it will absolutely crush your local public school, especially Radnor. We would be demolished under this scenario.
And
Make no mistake.
And I know we did a lot with this in the spring, and I think we could look back and see what were some of the steps we took in the spring and look to see what avenues we want to replicate.
And I remember hearing from some people who said, well, you went through that entire community push, whatever happened. I think we can't take for granted that anybody knows what's happening. It's hard enough for us to keep up with it and find out sort of what feels like clandestine activity sometimes on the part of the legislature. So I think it's probably not a bad idea anyway to circle back and say, as you may remember, to connect the dots, here's what's gone on, and give them a little chronicle of moving forward, and even tying it into sort of the way I'm a proponent of social studies for students, because they don't have the historical perspective because they're so young, is tying social studies units to current events to make it more relatable. And to make this relatable, we are at September 11th, and our state does not at this point have a revenue plan, and there was authorized some funding for those districts who are very dependent on state revenue. They're hanging on for dear life right now, and the governor freed up some money for them, but that's going to expire very soon. And just like 2 years ago, they will be back in a situation where they have to take out loans and they're going to be underwater. So if we end up being, like everyone else, like many others, a district that's reliant on the state to feed us money, we are going to have severe cash flow problems. And that is not a hypothetical. That's reality, and what has happened 2 years ago and is likely to happen again now unless a revenue plan comes through quickly. I also wanted to mention that in some communication with other people outside the district, it was brought to my attention that another superintendent in the community mentioned that House Bill, like we had said, House Bill 25 will be the first step to new legislation on reducing or eliminating property taxes. Much like in 1977 when Pennsylvania last did this. Act 50 at that time passed to allow school districts to reduce property taxes by 50% and go to referendum for additional money. Only one district did that, Central Dauphin, and they went broke the following year. So I thought that was, as clear as you can say it. This is perilous, and we really have to make sure that our community understands what this referendum question is all about, and work as hard as we did when we first passed the resolution last year to have them come out and support this for the sake of everybody. And it goes even beyond school districts. I mean, regular residents are going to be really impacted by this.
I think it's important to say, too, that, I mean, this board unanimously was opposed to this. So I think it's clear in Radnor that, you know, we're not crying wolf and we're not playing politics. I mean, I think for Radnor, this is an absolute lose. I mean, this would change the game. And for every resident, I mean, the truth of the matter is we value excellent education first, but subsequently, too, your property values are tied to the excellence of your public schools, and this would destroy them. So every single resident, you know, you really, everybody's got a stake in this township. It's clear. And so I guess however we can make that, because I think this board was unanimous
Absolutely
in
was.
the perils of this. So we really need to get that out to people.
And like we said, you know, this is not a typical partisan political issue. This is a geopolitical issue. The districts who tend to find this less concerning are those districts who rely less on local property taxes than we do and have other concerns that are, it's very unique to each individual community's needs and practices. So there are many, many districts who have passed resolutions just like we did. At last count, it was, I know it was over 20 and that I was keeping track of, and then, Kevin, you may know of more. But we're not alone in this, and I think we need to keep it going. And so I thank you, Mr. Batchelor, for getting to this and helping us bring this forward in September for some additional attention.
I think one of the things I would like to know, if we could, contact our senator and find out what the purpose of this is. Just ask. Okay? What's the purpose?
Purpose of the Senate Bill 76 or the 1285?
1285.
Well, the purpose of 1285.
No. You're kind of missing. I don't want to know what you believe the purpose of it is. There's a purpose of what this is. And I would like to know from our representatives what they believe the purpose is. Because there's an underlying theme here.
Right. There are
And
people.
this is not what,
Well-
no. And I understand where you.
There are people that don't want the money to go to public schools, Chuck.
Right,
They're
I
happy for
understand.
the money
I
to
wanna
go
know
to other
where.
places, and they want to alleviate
I
their
understand
own
that.
property taxes because they don't value or benefit from the public education system.
No,
So that's
no,
the purpose.
No, it's not. It's not. I want to know from my senator what he believes the purpose of this is. We have an elected senator who represents Radnor Township. I would like to know.
He is absolutely opposed to this. If
Well,
you've
wait,
heard,
let Chuck
No,
finish,
you're not,
'cause I
you're
think he
not
wants to
really,
get us
you're
thought
not
out.
really following. There's more to this than what
Meets the
is here. And I would like to try to understand what the underlying purpose, what this will do if it's put in, what they believe it will do, and that should drive what they vote, how they'll vote, how our guy will vote, which we will then know.
right,
and
well,
then-
he's spoken on this. So I've heard
No.
Dalen
Wait,
Leach
let
speak
Chuck
on
finish.
this.
No,
Just
you're-
let Chuck
And
finish.
he will vote against it,
Yeah,
but
but-
there are other parts of the state that benefit from this. He's
No,
spoken on this.
I do. I
And he's
understand that.
explained what they're pushing for.
No, I understand that, but I want for him
He's done that.
to. no,
Okay, but
he
wait,
has not.
can I just say something that may clarify? I'm hoping to maybe bring Chuck to convert
We're
boards. So-
kind of both agreeing,
right.
Lydia, with, I just want a little more than I'm going to vote no for this.
He will give you
Well, wait, you're talking about Dalen Leach. I just want to be clear. House Bill 1285 has been passed by the General Assembly. That means our senators and our state representatives.
Mm-hmm. what's the
So
purpose of it?
that's Dalen Leach, it's Greg Vitale, and it's Alex Charlton. Those three people have, I don't know how they voted, but it has appeared before the General Assembly. It's passed the House and it's passed the Senate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we have three Radnor representatives 2 state reps, 1 state senator. And my sense is that from the 3 of them, you would like a little bit more narrative about their thinking when it comes to House Bill 1285. We haven't
And
taken
what-
the time to look at how
Right.
they voted on it.
And what will the
I-
impact be? What do
Right.
they believe? Like, in other words, if you vote for something, you should have an understanding of what it is, how that is going to impact.
Okay.
That's all.
Well,
And
we
the one
know
com-
that, so we can
And
get
by
that.
the way.
I agree.
October
I don't.
20th, boom, House Bill 1285, right? There you go. Topic number 1. We're going to have all 3 of them at our breakfast.
Right, sorry.
Perfect opportunity to.
Oh, it is.
So tell us, Ms. Chuck will say, so tell us, what are your thoughts? What is your agenda behind 1285? You've got them as a captive audience.
I have had,
Well, but mic drop. Boom.
and Mike, yes.
Just a question, because since they already voted for it and it's a referendum, they're not voting for it again, right?
No, no,
It's
no,
the,
no,
it's
no,
the
no.
consequence if the referendum might go through.
Yes. I don't fully understand why if you would support it or you would not support it, and I would like to understand that. I have had conversations with other people about this and have received various rationale for how they voted for it. And
So-
I would just like to know where my guys are. I've talked to other senators and have some of that information.
So, for example, when Alex Charlton made the public statement to our board at a business meeting that he is opposed to Senate Bill 76, you would assume that he also voted against House Bill 1285. Because 1285 paves the way for Senate Bill 76, or something like it, to be enacted. So, that may be,
That may be
that
something,
may,
that
that
may
will
be
be a
something to
question.
look
And he
at.
says, no, I supported 1285. Well, explain that. If you're opposed to Senate Bill 76, why would you support changing the state constitution, which makes it easier for something like Senate Bill 76 to pass? So we've got a lot of really good material, I think. We thought we had good material at the last breakfast. I think we've got just as juicy material for this breakfast. But that's the nature of legislation. I mean, it is unbelievable what goes on up there with all of the legislation coming through on so many different topics. It's amazing how anyone can keep up with all of it.
Well, food for thought.
Yes.
What this also does is it allows, with the change in the state constitution, it would allow local districts with 100% exclusion on properties that people own. Properties that people own. It's the homestead, okay? And then that will enable the state to tax differently the corporate centers, the apartment buildings, and everything else. It is giving opportunity to change the way we tax.
Right, but
that's-
it leaves us with no way,
Well, I'm just saying.
no local
No,
control.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying that's something that I was under the impression that was one of the drivers for that could be what they're looking at, changing the Constitution so they can come after. If you remember, they had the big box piece that they tried to push forward, and that was unconstitutional, the way they tried to do that. Well, this gives them more of the ability to do that. So what I'm saying is, we're not privy to some of the reasoning behind this. I would just like to publicly know what it is so we can share that with our constituents.
Okay. Well, we will do that. So a lot of food for thought there and important stuff. So thank you, everybody, for that discussion because it was important. Does our student representative have any questions? Or don't feel like you're on the spot or anything, Jack. But and if you would like to ask a question, just push the button there for your mic.
There we go. I think it would be more important to communicate to people who are not in the district. I don't know what our role would be as local government, but I think it's more important to get the word out to people who don't live in as a wealthy district as Radnor, to communicate that there's going to be taxes elsewhere. Because it's easy to convince people here, but it might not be as easy to convince people in other districts. And when it comes down to it, like one vote in Radnor is the same as
one vote in Philadelphia.
That's true. I mean, the forum that Mr. Madden went to in Upper Darby, that's a neighboring district of ours, and there were many people there in those communities who were overwhelmingly in support of legislation like this, and trying to convince them otherwise is challenging. There's going to be, I think I had mentioned, there's going to be another forum in Marple, I think next week, for anybody who's interested. It's on Thursday, no, it's this week. A Delaware County Town Hall meeting on Thursday, September 14th at 7 o'clock. Doors open at 6 o'clock. It's at the Marple Library at 2599 South Sproul Road in Broomall, free admission. And this is going to be a town hall on this topic. So for anybody who's interested.
Who's putting it on? Who is sponsoring it?
Well, the same people, I think, who did the Upper Darby one. For example, the
Who are they?
Pennsylvania Taxpayers Cyber Coalition, the Pennsylvania Liberty Alliance, and you can tell by the bullet points on the flyer the bias, I guess, of the meeting, because it says things like foreclosures are up 24% in Delaware County in 3 years, property taxes go up almost every year, countywide reassessment. So I think that it's going to be very much of the flavor of the other town halls that have been occurring, but those of us who have a different point of view on this issue certainly should make ourselves present at these meetings and state our case. So I just, I don't know if you want to, that should be circulated or anything, but I just wanted to mention there's another one, and it's pretty local, given that it's Broomall. So if everybody's okay, we'll move on to the fifth and final item on our agenda, which is a when Mr. Batchelor announced the district goals for us at a board meeting, there were also some accompanying priority projects that he announced that don't quite rise to the level of goals per se, but they are things that the district wants to focus on. And one of those was strategic communications, so we thought it was appropriate to have Mr. Petiti sort of speak to what that means in terms of a priority project for the school year.
Okay, so the good news is that priority project dovetails perfectly with the results of our communication survey that we held last April for parents and staff. And some major takeaways from that survey were a desire for an increased use of School Messenger, a desire for more teacher web page consistency, and streamlining the Radnor Reader, which is our weekly newsletter that goes out to the community, so that it was easier to receive and digest information. So we mentioned discussing the public survey at this point, and that is something in the works. I don't have a timeline yet for when that will be released, but I'm guessing that my hope is that those results will supplement the results that we received from the parent and staff surveys, and we can use them also to inform the Strategic Communications Priority Project. So look for more information on that public survey in the coming months. First thing that I did to enact some strategy around School Messenger in response to the communication survey was I created Google Calendars this summer for every building, and I shared them with every principal so that the principals could have at their disposal an easy-to-access calendar that would outline a schedule and the messaging for School Messenger calls, emails, and texts throughout the year. So to relieve them of the thought and the extra work of having to come up with when should I send something, what's a good message to send around certain events or assessments or whatever subject that rises to a level of importance, I pinpointed that for them based upon our district calendar. I wrote the messages for them so that all they need to do is follow along on the Google Calendar every month and just copy and paste into School Messenger and send or record those calls. Wow. So hopefully by supporting the buildings in that capacity, we'll be able to get more messages out using School Messenger strategically, informing our parents of what's going on, and then that will kind of appease that one point that came up in the survey. Secondly, I mentioned earlier about teacher web pages as part of the audit of the website that we're doing, the the compliance and the accessibility situation. I've already had the trainings with the teachers about how to bring their pages more into consistency so that a parent at the elementary level gets familiar with the layout when they move to middle school, when they move to high school, the schedule, the contact information, et cetera, is in the same place on each teacher page, updated on a regular basis, and this will help with conveying information on those pages, where right now it may seem more difficult to locate that because every teacher page has a different kind of layout and way. So we've already taken steps to make those pages more consistent, and resources are being provided to the teachers to help them with recreating their pages, and we have some checklists that we're putting in place so we can keep tabs on how they're moving along and give them that support. Lastly, the Radnor Reader, for those who receive it may have seen recently that it's been redesigned. I actually have two examples from last year and from this year. If you take a look just quickly, you can see at a glance that we attempted to make it much easier to delve right into the schools with one easy scroll in the new design. Whereas in the old version, you got the beginning portion, which were kind of highlights with a sidebar. And this came up kind of funky on mobile, which is what we did find in the survey. Many people are accessing our electronic content via mobile. So we need to scroll all the way down to finally get to the high school. Whereas in the new version, you kind of have one or two scrolls and you're there. And we've already seen really good returns in the data that we've been pulling on this newsletter. What we really look for is what's called the click rate. And what the click rate is it tells you in a given document or in a given electronic file you send out who's in there clicking on the links that are within the piece. And that's how you know there's engagement happening. And over the last 4 editions, since the new design's been rolled out, we've seen a substantial increase in the click rate since these same exact 4 editions last school year. So we've already seen some nice feedback that people are scrolling through more often and engaging more with the newsletter, and we hope that has been a benefit to them in every Sunday when they receive it to get through it quicker.
I might jump in there too. Mr. Petiti's also looking at adjusting some of the school board update to try to give a little bit more of summary and not just realize that we can't list everything that's in there, but just give some more summary information of what's taken place at some of either the committee meetings or the business meeting as well.
Yes.
So I thought that was a good idea. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So just for an example, we have upwards of 2,000 to 3,000 opens every week on this newsletter, and we have upwards of 1,000 to 2,000 people clicking into it. So it does reach a lot of our constituency, and our people value the newsletter, and they get information from it, and that's a provable data point that we can point to. So I do encourage every teacher who's listening, or even board members or whomever that wants to get information out, that the Reader is a great channel to share information.
I just wanted to say I think that that's incredible. I know that putting the surveys together, the ones that have been done so far, were a tremendous amount of work. We were really fortunate to get so much participation on the part of the staff and the families, and I think I would like to put out the suggestion again, if that's okay, that when people take the time and energy to fill out a survey, they really want to know sort of if their voices were heard and where it led. So would it be possible to, this terrific summary, much more detailed even than what's on the screen, I was taking notes about. For example, it says teacher web pages, but you're working to increase teacher web page consistency, which I know will come as welcome news to many families. Is there the possibility that this could be communicated out as a message saying thank you to those people who have so far participated in the surveys we've given, and we wanted to let you know that while we can't address necessarily everything and everything right away, here are some of the things that your feedback generated that we have addressed, and here's how we've addressed them. I think that that's really important in terms of continuing to enlist future participation. So would that would that be a possibility that we could do something like that soon?
Yes, I know you had mentioned we had spoken about doing that, and I have plans to do it. It's been kind of pushed back a little bit due to some other projects that came up that were more topical, I should say timely. But yes, that's something I can definitely put together and get out on the reader and make sure people understand that we value their feedback and we put some into place already.
And if it's in the reader, that means that the staff would see it, because we got a lot of staff responses, and the families would see it.
Yes.
Okay. I just think that's terrific. I mean, that's what surveys are there for, is to have someone evaluate your work. And if there are things that you're doing well, that's terrific. And if there are things that they feel could be improved upon or tweaked, they hope that you take that to heart. And you have, and I just think it's important to let the community know that. So, and we will look forward to a community survey. And I think I just got an indication that Jack would like to say something.
And I think it would be important with the teacher web pages if we could get all the teachers, depending on the school, to stick to either their teacher web page or Schoology, because I know since I've gone to the high school, I haven't used any of the teacher web pages because most of our teachers have their stuff on Schoology. But I know in elementary school I use the teacher web pages every day. So maybe encouraging teachers to, or finding one platform that works and sticking to that one so you're not like going to multiple places.
How does that work? I mean,
That
is
is
that
actually.
administrative direction? Is it contractual?
That's actually one of the main training points that I offered the teachers when I met with them at the beginning of the year was we want to move away, at least at the secondary level, from those who are using Schoology, from putting assignments and whatever else into the web pages because students are expecting to receive all that stuff through Schoology. So the hope is that, at least at the secondary level, the teacher pages will become really a place for the public at large to learn about the class or learn about the teacher and the schedule. And things that are just specific to students, like your assignments, should be placed on Schoology only.
That was one of the things, Jack, you echoed, so thank you. You echoed exactly the feedback that I heard from some focus groups with students that has been shared with the high school administration, that the students are looking for some consistency on that use of Schoology, that it's varied degrees, and that's something that I think will also continue to come up in the technology committee. So we have a committee right now that's not only looking at the use of devices in the classroom, but that committee is also looking at what is our technology and what is that expectation as a district. And I think one of the things that will come out of that is an understanding of what is that expectation at the high school level, at the middle school level, at the elementary level, and how teachers should be using Schoology and make sure that we're uniform with that as well.
Yeah, I remember reading those survey from comments pretty thoroughly. I think I was going on a train to New York, and the 2-hour or whatever it is train ride, I still didn't get through all of them, which is a good thing, a good problem to have when people are giving you feedback. And it occurred to me that many of those comments crossed into the realm of technology. And while they thought they were providing communications feedback, it actually was feedback that technology was more appropriate for technology. So I don't know if those comments have been highlighted and shared with the technology committee. I mean, I'd be happy to go back through and look at them, but it would be a shame to waste that good feedback and not give it at some point to the technology committee. So, all right. So. Anything else, Jack? No? Okay. Well, thank you again so much for that. And before we go to public comment, unless anybody else has any new business, I would like to bring up something in new business. And that is that I believe this is going to be the last meeting where we will have the privilege of having two wonderful administrative liaisons to our committee. Mr. Kane is going to be resuming. He is the Director of Student Services, and he has provided incredible wisdom, guidance, and insight into our workings here as a committee. But he is now going to be spending additional time working on the student services agenda of his. So Mr. Petiti will become the sole administrative liaison to our committee. And I just didn't want the meeting to pass without saying and I'm sure the committee will echo me here on a heartfelt thank you to Kevin who I've observed in my very short time on the board as being very invested and working extremely hard to help us be the best committee we can be and provide the best information for our community on these topics. So, and we've done a lot of road trips together in that regard, and I will miss you because they were fun as we went around trying to help get a better grasp on these issues, and Chuck was on many of them as well. So on behalf of this committee, thank you so much, Kevin, for being an important part of it. We'll miss you, but I know that you have agreed graciously to continue help Michael transition into the lead role. And Michael is going to follow your lead and attend the Educational Policy Leadership Center Fellowship Program starting this weekend with the opening retreat. And it's a wonderful program that will really help Michael get just as expansive a view as he possibly can of all things government relations related. That's a 10-month fellowship program. The graduation is in June, so he is going to be working hard to become as an even stronger administrative liaison to this committee. So thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Michael. Welcome, Michael, in your new role. And with that, unless anybody wants to say anything else, we can.
I'd like to say thank you, Kevin, for all the work that you've done. You've provided us with a real view of what's going on. Kevin is grounded in reality, which is beneficial to us. So we look at things in a cerebral sense, in a conceptual sense, and then we always have to come back to what's real. So I value your opinion on the real issues, and I will probably still get those off of you when I need them.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for all you've done for us.
Yeah, of course, I have to butt in here. So when this committee first started, it was Kevin and I. And I'm actually surprised here because I know that you love this stuff and have been, you've carried this from the beginning. And then Michael was added, and you're great partners. But you guys need to know that this is mainly the work of Kevin. So
I've
will
learned
miss
a lot
you.
from Kevin, so it's not hard to imagine him as a founder of this. Thank you for all that you've taught me and exposed me to, and brought to our committee as a whole. It's really been great, and we will carry on with Michael, and he will take us to great places too, I'm quite sure. So thank you both for your commitment and investment in this work.
And the board will still be working very closely with Kevin with many of the student services items as well. But you know what time we meet here, so I want you to feel welcome to, please join us at any, any time as well.
Yeah. You guys have a good time.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank everybody again for indulging us. We got started a little late, and for our unusually long meeting we had scheduled tonight, we knew we had 3 meetings to squeezed into this 1 month, and we would now like to take some public comment before we conclude, if there's anybody who wants to make some.
Roberta Winters, and good evening again. I would like to also send my highest compliments to Kevin. I think sometimes when you sit in the audience and you hear a lot of administrative liaison people, there are few who give succinct and meaningful comments as he does. Also, I would like to commend Jack for his statement, and I would also, regarding the need to educate people beyond Radnor regarding the referendum question, and I would hope that those of you who are on social media, and that means people who are in Kevin's age group perhaps, might take and spread the word through and Jack, I'm sorry, Jack and Kevin's
pretty young.
Kevin's age group, Jack's age group, all those people in the know would spread the word, spread the word and Because it's not just, as you say, Jack, the people in Radnor who need to know. If you've got friends who you've gone to camp with in other parts of the state, grandma and grandpa in other counties, aunts and uncles, cousins, it's everybody's job to spread the word. And, telling your neighbor is not enough. So please, practice what you've suggested that we do and spread the word.
Thank you very much, Dr. Winters. Any other public comment?
I also would like to wish Kevin the best in the future. And the short number of years I've been coming, you've been a part of this and steering us in our government relations, et cetera, as well as student relations. So I thank you for that. Jack, excellent questions and points you raised this evening for your very first meeting. And it was interesting. It was positive for me to know that the student representative was actually listening to what was going on in our committee meetings. But you had some very good points in picking up on that, letting other people know. And how we can let everyone know. We talked about banners earlier in our facilities committee. They're putting these big banners on the football field, and we all wondered what they were. Just put a great big banner on all of our soccer, football, lacrosse fields in Radnor Township that say, vote against referendum for House Bill number 1285. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Spurtle.
Judy Sherry. I too want to thank Jack for his contributions. Really great to have a student perspective. I am curious to know, when teachers are evaluated, are there web pages as well as their Schoolology postings? Is that part of their evaluation? I don't know if it is, so maybe at some future meeting someone could tell me that. And I also wondered from a student perspective, and again, doesn't have to be answered at this meeting, but are there, we talked about consistency in teacher web pages, and I'm wondering about the Schoolology. Am I pronouncing that right? Schoolology? Schoolology. The Schoolology
It took me a while
postings.
too. Schoolology.
Schoology.
Yes.
Schoology.
Three times. Schoology. You'll never forget it.
Very good. Thank you. I'm wondering if there are, major differences between postings by teachers. If some might be a lot more helpful than others, I don't really know anything about. This is the first, actually, I realize that that's where students go to get their information as they progress through the school system. So I'd love to get, at some point, some feedback about that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And terrific. We have another student. Welcome. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name's Justin Callan. So I heard the deal with the teacher web pages and consistency as well as the Schoology mention. On the web pages, if you want to go for the utmost consistency on at least the main website that you wind up seeing from all the teachers that usually states their schedule, email, phone numbers, and info you can reach them from, adding something as to like a lost the word for a second, but like a guideline to different like boxes, because when you go into, I've seen teachers edit their web pages before. For the most part, you basically just get a text box edit window, and that can be a little confusing for some people on how to format stuff. If you had a template for basically it said homepage, you could add in your name, your email, your phone number, what your schedule is, when you're free, which would add a significant amount of consistency if you just basically told everyone this is the web page, this is how you have to set it up. That would, at least the homepage for teachers, be a lot more useful. And then as to the Schoology and the web page thing, I'm just like Jack. I never use the township or a high school website for assignments or anything. It mostly is on Schoology. And then the big difference is obviously we need to pick a platform that it's being used on. There also is now, because I know we've started using it a little bit, a third option we could potentially look into, which is Apple Classroom. Obviously, we've been investing heavily into the iPad program, so that's probably not going away anytime soon. But Apple also has their own ecosystem that is for classes and submissions, and frankly, Schoology is terrible. I personally think, I've heard other people say, Jack's giving me a weird look, but I've heard other people say that Schoology is pretty awful. Just the way it's structured and the way like you get updates and stuff, it doesn't seem to flow very well, and some teachers just frankly don't have any clue what they're doing with it. If Apple's known for one thing very well, it's user friendliness, so I would have a lot more faith in that company to design a classroom application that basically anyone could figure out how to get messages out to students, how to post assignments, and when saying it's due on time, how to look at their messages and whatnot. That could probably help a lot with certain teachers, and the teachers that know how to use Schoology really well are probably slightly more handy, so it wouldn't be too much of an issue for them to relearn a new system. I think that was it. Yeah.
Well, don't go anywhere, Justin, because I want to. I wish more students would come up and make comment. And I know it's not easy. Maybe it was easy for you, but I just want to thank you for coming to our meeting. And you're a junior, right?
I'm a senior.
Senior. Okay. So thank you for coming for our meeting. I don't know what prompted you to spend your Tuesday night with us, but it is wonderful to hear from students on these issues. So I think we'd all love for you to come again. We're thrilled we have Jack. The more students, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So thank you. And I just wanted to ask on that point, if you were aware that the district is doing a technology integration study as we speak. So, no?
I was not aware of that, no.
Okay. So, again, I don't know what the student involvement piece is per se of the technology integration study, but
So I do know that it's going to come up in our curriculum committee meeting next week, but it's just going to be like a 5-minute blurb on what the plan is. So there's more to come, but this is exactly the kind of thing they're going to be looking for.
yeah, so Justin, if you happen to be free next Tuesday too, and or you can watch it or you don't have to, but this study has been going on because I think it's been 5 years since the iPad program was introduced, and so it's now time to evaluate that one-to-one program in the high school, see how it's going along with other technology initiatives, and so there is a committee that consists of administrators and teachers and community members, parents, whatever, who are looking into things like you were just saying. So I encourage you. I think there's something. Is there a place on the website that do you know where it is? Maybe.
Under the,
not that you go to the website that often, but perhaps for this it would justify going.
Come on, you can look at the pictures. It's under the departments, right, on the homepage. Teaching and learning, and then there's a technology integration study link, if you're interested.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's clear you have some strong feelings about the technology integration here, and it would be wonderful to have you lend your voice to the committee that's actually studying that. So you have the place on the website, the curriculum committee next week. Keep it coming. Thank you so much for your contributions. And is there... Oh, you want to say more?
Also, to answer the question that was asked about the consistency of teachers, there's a huge difference between that. Like, for example, my English class and, like in this case, econ, but social studies has previously, those classes have always been on the iPad. But, for example, math, last year especially, had zero involvement on the iPad, like in its entirety, because a lot of, like, I know definitely there are plenty of math and science teachers that very much like the traditional pen and paper. Personally, I do too, but and then the other ones, some of the English and history, they love the iPads and they love Schoology and Notability and using all of the digital stuff. But that lends itself to a huge disparity in, you only know, a third or half of your classes are on Schoology, and then everything else is kind of like you have to write it down because their teachers don't post it.
Okay.
Yes, that lens.
Right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming and those contributions. Is there any other public comment before we conclude? Okay. So Okay. So with that, we will conclude our meeting. Thank you again, everyone, for staying late tonight.